People, Ableton Live 9.5 has just dropped as of, not right now, as of yesterday, because I didn't do this video in time. But yeah, it came out yesterday and it's cool. There are new features. I'm going to tell you these new features right now. So what are the new things in Ableton Live 9.5 that weren't in the previous one? Well, comes down to a few things. First of all, you may have noticed that when I load up a new audio track, look at that, they're all different colors. That is cool. May sound like a trivial thing, but that's actually genuinely useful because normally you have to color them all and it's annoying and you don't know what instrument is what. So colors, they look fantastic. It looks like the rainbow. Also practical, also functional, allows you to see what is going on. Check this out as well. Let's say there's an audio clip. If I press the right button, I'm on an audio track. Let's do a MIDI track instead. Insert MIDI. Look at that, it's the same color as the channel. By default, much more useful. It's the little things that matter. They are important. Anyway, what are the less little things that are new and different and cool? Well, check it out. If I put some sound through the medium of noise in one of these little meters, let's grab a loop, something like... Can't hear that at all. Why can't I hear that? Oh, I haven't turned my headphones on. Duh. There you go. I'm a pro at this, by the way. Right, so headphones are on, loop. So let's put a loop in an audio track. Check this out. Check out these meters. You're ready to have your mind blown. Yeah. You may have noticed there are different colors. There is like a light green and a darker green. What this means is you not just see the overall peak of the channel, which is what you used to just see, you also see the RMS, root mean squared, or whatever that fancy maths term is. It's basically fancy word for loudness, approximately. It doesn't factor in the human balance of frequencies, but it's a rough approximation, but it's an approximation of loudness. So as you're playing, say, a loop or a track or whatever for a meter, you can not only see the peak loudness or the peak amplitude, which is the dark green, you can also see the root mean squared, or approximately the loudness. Now, it's not absolutely the loudness, but it's an extra tool we can use at a glance to see what's going on. Really useful stuff. Again, it's not a complicated thing for them to code in. It's just a little cool detail that allows us to see more information at a glance when we're looking at our track, whether it's mixing, producing, mastering, whatever it is. Really cool stuff. Normally you'd have to use, I'd use Isotope Ozone when I'm mastering to see the RMS, but now I can use Ableton. Check that out. That's pretty sweet, I think. Anyway, another cool thing, which is super cool and dope. Check out these waveforms now. Look how different they look. Maybe if I make it bigger, you might even see. Ooh, if I do this, look at that. Look how smooth that is. And if you have a Retina display, such as a MacBook Pro with Retina display, you'll see it in Retina form, or Retina high resolution. But even if you've just got a normal like 1080p screen like me, it still looks amazing. It looks sweet, right? It's basically everything's smoothened out. They've changed the way they've rendered the waveform, so everything just looks a lot nicer. It's not just more aesthetically pleasing, which I think it is more aesthetically pleasing, but you can see more detail as well at a glance. So you can see at a glance whether a sample is a bit noisier, maybe with high frequencies, than another sample and so on. Again, it's one of those things that over time, you'll get a feel for what a waveform should look like for a certain sound, just like we got used to the previous waveforms. This has more information, therefore more useful. I think that is cool. So the waveforms are better like that, better like that. Sweet. What else is new? There was other new things as well. They've got new filters in stuff like auto filter and a few other things. So for example, let's just use this loop here. Dope. Let's put an auto filter on there to demonstrate. Why isn't that? I'm clicking the wrong button. There you go. So we'll put an auto filter on there. Normally what would happen is when you had an auto filter, it was just a normal filter. Like you got the little shape and you could like sweep it, which is all cool and stuff, but check this out. What you could do is now you can make it all analogy. And what do we even mean by analogy? Well, there are a few different options: OSR, MS2, SMP, and PRD, which stands for, I have no idea, it doesn't really matter. Anyway, they're just different sounding analogy filters. So they're doing stuff to the phase and the saturation, and they're just basically coloring the sound in a nice and interesting way, a sonically pleasing way, which is sweet. So you can either use it as a stationary normal low pass filter, or you can do sweeps and it will sound lovely, it will sound great. I forgot to click the drive button. This is important because if you want it to sound nice and analogy, you might want to drive it. Check this out. See, it's driven now. Oh, it's sounding beautiful. Don't forget this drive. This turns out to be important that I forgot. Brain malfunction. Sounds sweet, right? Let's check out the different analog modes. It's subtle, but it's cool. So yeah, it just warms things up, thickens it up in a nice analogy way. So yeah, don't forget to drive it a little bit to hear the difference. Maybe not too much. And yeah, things will just sound sweet when you're doing your sweeps. Because remember, we're making dance music. We have low pass sweeps, high pass sweeps all the time. It's like a windscreen wiper, a track. It's just constantly going. It's cool. My mouse is on the side. Anyway, it's cool, right? That is the analog modeled filters, which are sweet. Yeah, that's an auto filter. They're also in simpler operator and probably another thing as well. Can't remember. Anyway, it doesn't matter. So let's have a look at one of the final new things, which is there is now a new and improved simpler instrument. Now, we've always had simpler. Simpler is the simpler sampler. See what they did there? Pretty cool, Ableton. Simpler sampler. And now it is not the simpler sampler. It's just a different sampler because I don't think it's simpler. Actually, it is simpler. So I suppose it is the simpler sampler. But now it's more complicated than it used to be, but also more simpler. Maybe it's the compler now, the more complicated simpler. Or the complimpler, maybe. I'm going to call it the complimpler because it's a slightly more complicated. It's basically simpler, but they've done some cool new stuff. There's quite a lot of new stuff, and I'm not going to run you through all the cool stuff that this new simpler does. Because there's videos on the Ableton website, and also I'm going to do some of my own videos running you through how it works because it's cool. And I'm going to do another video in 5 minutes time when I show you one really sweet use for this new simpler instrument using the multi-slicing mode, which is rad. But it basically works in a different way to the old simpler. Some of the ways are similar. I'm saying the sort of similar words right now. Similar, simpler, similar words. I'm getting distracted. Anyway, so yeah, there's a lot of things that are similar, but it does a lot more than it used to. But at the same time, I suppose it is simpler than Sampler. Sampler does a lot more multi-sample stuff. It does a lot more fancy things in terms of manipulating your samples. This is, in terms of doing simple sample manipulation, which is what most people do most of the time. They aren't doing, like, they're not frequency modulating the sample or doing anything fancy like that or doing crazy multi-samples. Most people are just taking a sample and they're using it in a somewhat simple way. And then this simpler can do a lot more of that now. So it's more complicated than before, but it's still not too complicated. And it was really sweet. It's also got a way to make it big. So let's drag in a sample because I think this is quite a nice touch. It's a small touch, but I think this makes a difference. So let's grab a loop, say slice it up. You basically get this little arrow now, like you used to have for EQ8 and Spectrum, and you can make it big, which I think is cool because it allows you to really dive into your sample and do some cool stuff with it. Anyway, I'm not actually going to go into what Simpler does in detail now. Does some of that. Anyway, check out my next video for some cool uses of Simpler. And that is pretty much all that is new in Ableton Live 9.5. Oh yeah, there's more sounds, more samples which you can download. There's some more Max for Live stuff which I haven't had a good chance to dive into yet, but there are some more Max for Live stuff. I think it's called a Max for Live Essentials pack, so have a dig through that. If it sounds cool to you, there's some new instruments like a bass thing, a poly thing, just some cool instruments, I guess. There's also a push 2 coming out or released, we'll call it what you like. This is a push 1. I'm trying to get my hands on a push 2, so really would like one. And yeah, the push 2 does some really cool stuff. But hopefully I'm going to get one soon, and then I can give you a load of videos on how that works. Because I never really did a lot of videos on this one. I'm going to do a lot on the push 2 if I can try and get one. So yeah, it's going to be sweet. Anyway, definitely get 9.5. There's absolutely no reason not to. It is rad. It is dope. And you may have noticed I've now changed my default skin to grey because just felt like it.